go to the market, talk to a CRO, talk to a VP of HR, talk whatever the role might be, and we assume that a 22-year-old kid can follow a talk track and have the business acumen to uncover pain points and intel in the account. Instead, they know they can't do that, so what do? Just push meetings. That's all they do. They just push meetings. And most of the meetings shouldn't have happened. The meetings that do happen, you're going to get something from it, but it's not a profitable model because now you're paying for 2 roles that's getting the production of less than what 1 role used to get.
Welcome back to the B2B Playbook, where we believe that great go-to-market is about people, not platforms. Nowhere is that belief more tested than in Outbound. For the last decade, Outbound has been built on a factory model. SDR booking meetings, AEs running demos, and leadership obsessing over pipeline volume. But that model is starting to crack. Buyers trust it less, deals stall, and whole go-to-market systems leak revenue before they even begin. We've got CEO of Titan X, Joey Gilkey, with us, and he's been one of the loudest voices calling out the sales industrial complex for selling teams on activity at all costs. And joining us too, of course, is Adem Manderovic, the creator of Closed Circuit Selling and CRO School. Adam, I'm keen to get you also into why this volume game might be broken, but also how we can go even deeper on this problem. And I know, Joey, you want to dig into that too. So today we're going to pull apart why that SDR-AE split eroded buyer trust, why segmentation and incentives might still miss the mark, and what the future of Outbound should really look like. Joey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Let's get after it.
Yeah.
100%. And Adam, as always, good to have you too.
What an intro. We could just leave it there, guys.
Yeah.
All right, let's go home.
Out.
Joey, you get back to the pool with your kids.
Yeah, I had to pull them out kicking and screaming, both of them.
I love it. Look, Joey, for those who haven't heard of Titan X, could you please give us a quick overview of what it is and really what problem it's solving?
Sure. Yeah. Titan X is a phone intent platform. And so at its core, the problem in the market we solve is that we spend a lot of money on this hyper inefficient model, which is SDR and AE. Ironically, it was built to be efficient. And the biggest problem that we see is that reps aren't going to get the at-bats. So we pay all this money. We have cost per dial, cost per conversation, all these metrics that we're paying for. We don't realize it. And reps aren't getting at-bats. And so I know over there in the APAC region, Australia, the connect rates are a little better, but here in the States, it's about 2 to 5% on average. And so what we do is we have a fundamental belief that there is a percentage of the market that has the human behavior to pick up the phone. We know how to analyze the data to figure out who those people are. And when we do that, we enable reps to focus their efforts and directionalize their efforts so they can get 25% connect rates in the phone. And that's about it. We don't try to solve every problem. We try to solve one very big one, and then enable the crap out of it around it.
Yeah, no, I like it. Adam, I am, Joey, originally just a humble marketer more so than a salesperson. And we were putting together a Chief Revenue School with Adam, which is like more of a cross-functional training program. And he introduced me to Titan X, and we refer to Titan X in our program as well, because he said, look, I got to see working closely with sales how important and precious their time is, and just how important that channel validation is. And I guess that's what you guys do at Titan X, right? Is if someone's more likely to pick up the phone, then we want to know who those people are, so then we can be more efficient when we're dialing.
That's right. Yeah, just prioritize the efforts, and we're not phone is only. We just think that phone is the most important, because probably we'll get into today. Conversations are the North Star, in my opinion. Let's be honest, revenue is the North Star, but what's the precursor to that is having conversations around the market, understanding where people are at. So we think that we enable that very well. We don't think that we're the only solution for all of go-to-market. We just think we're an important one.
And Adam, what about you in your experience on the front line as a salesperson? How does all that sit with you?
Yeah, it's vitally important to obviously validate the channel so that those people can be more efficient. As Joey said, that we're probably a little bit luckier in APAC. If you can call with purpose and you get the right person, they'll generally answer the phone. Yeah, the explosion of that being the requirement is probably also pushed from the sales industrial complex, right? Because what's happened is over time, through that flood of the market, through predictable revenue modeling, pushing everyone towards the meeting, go for the kill in the first call, or sell the kitchen sink, as we say over here, that's pushed the market to be less receptive of the people that would have answered the phone previously. So that's then created a market requirement to be able to validate those channels, so those people are not just twiddling their thumbs and waiting for marketing to give them stuff that probably won't go anywhere either. That's a joke. I'm not saying that marketing is useless. That yeah,
I knew I should have ended this after the
yeah,
introduction.
yeah. I know. So for context, like George and I have a running joke that sales, or previously in my heads of sales and CRO roles, we would basically just ignore what marketing would give us because we knew that it was useless. But that's not the type of marketing and connection and like cross-functional pollination that we talk about through having like further enhancing what you guys do in terms of channel validation, but obviously also validating the market with market signals. And then we bring marketing into the fold. But we'll get further into that. But yeah, so now we just make a joke about it. Yeah, I would have always just ignored what they do anyway. Just go back to what we're doing.
Maybe we can go a bit deeper into why the SDR-AE split outs have lost trust with buyers. Joey, do you have any thoughts on that?
Do I have thoughts? I mean, it's a fundamentally broken model for a number of reasons. I think we got to step back and say, like, why did it happen in the first place? I think that the cheap answer would say it was a function of trying to scale. But you have to ask, why wasn't the previous model scaling? We used to have inside sales, outside sales. We'd have full cycle sales reps, which I'm a huge fan of. I think, Adam, you are as well. And I think that what happened was as headwinds started to introduce themselves into the market, and I think, bless his heart, Aaron Ross wrote Predictable Revenue coming off of a Salesforce run. Mind you, it's Salesforce, and so you can do things different when you're Salesforce than you can a $50 million company. And so I think the why behind it was something was going on with the existing model, and so we needed to silo out or fractionalize the roles so that we could have half of them focused on pipe gen and half of them focused on closing and nurturing. And we have deviated far from that path, right? Deeper down that hole, if you will. And so I think that, one, the reason why is important, but I think, two, why is it not working today? Or what is the fundamental flaw is, one, you fractionalize what was meant to be one role, I think. And then second, I think that you've also introduced a ton of friction and immaturity in the sales process, right? These are assuming you sell something of value, right? We're throwing a frontlines 22-year-old kid who's not experienced, go to the market, talk to a CRO, talk to a VP of HR, talk whatever the role might be. And we assume that a 22-year-old kid can follow a talk track and have the business acumen to uncover pain points and intel in the account. Instead, they know they can't do that. So what do? Just push meetings. That's all they do. Just push meetings. And most of the meetings shouldn't have happened. The meetings that do happen, you're going to get something from it, but it's not a profitable model because now you're paying for two roles that's getting the production of less than what one role used to get. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm jazzed up to talk about it.
You have. And I want to also get into what the downstream, unless you have something to add there, Adam, what the downstream consequences of that have been.
Yeah, so just touching on that, so what that actually did was not having those senior people. So across APAC and even like into Europe, what used to happen, Joey, is what you're probably aware, but just for the viewers, the people that were senior to be able to speak peer to those people at that level would come from working in customer success first. So they knew what was inside of the deal. They knew what was inside of the contract. They knew what was going to get approved. They knew what was going to get past legal, finance, what was going to be serviceable for the communication plan. So they knew every working of the deal. Then they had a chance to be promoted into business development, to be on the front line, to start working that stuff and earn the big money.
It was a privilege. It wasn't an entry point.
Yeah, man. So what the Aaron Ross model has done is wash out that model, or even people remembering. So people have literally called me crazy and put me in lunatic groups for even just reciting what used to happen, man. Like I'm old, like I'm 43, right? This is like not anything new. We're just reciting of what used to happen and used to be like the baseline, or the bare minimum, if we can go there, right? The repercussions of that is those people, as you said, don't have the skills to be able to hold those conversations with the people in the right rooms. But the other thing of pushing that to meetings, as you said, as the measurement, obviously also changed the tools, which then changed the behaviors and then changed the commercial acumen of those people. And then that just became like the tech SaaS Fugazi just took over all of the markets. Like you can look at, there was a post by Winter yesterday and someone called out the fact that you mean B2B SaaS, not B2B in general, because B2B in general actually knows what we're talking about. So that's what's happened. And then that forces from the marketing ends in terms of commercial architecture, Paul George's team is only left to do mass meaningless MQLs because they've got to keep feeding the wheel so these people can make calls that are going to go nowhere. As I said earlier, like my team, we should just ignore that shit because we knew that would go nowhere. Like we just knew if we just went out, validated the market first, validated the channels to make sure we'd have the right conversation. Luckily, back then it was just the phone. And then we just validated like who they're with, what they like, what they don't, when it might come up for tender, when they might want to look like it as an audit, what would it need to take that back as a template. Back then it was manila folders called a deal rack or a deal folder to marketing and say, build this out 3, 6, 9 months. And then the offshoot of that, those conversations when you're not trying to sell the meeting, was we also got the product roadmap for the next 12 to 24 months because they'd be say, hey, look, that you're probably not where you need to be for us to build this and this with you. But if you were to build this, then we could be. And that is completely, that whole 2 layer of those skills is washed out of the market, which further enhances your point of why channels need to be validated to get into more of those conversations. But that just seems to be like this untalked about, remembering, like it's people forget that was what we did. And if we simply just went back to market validations to open opportunities from first party intent signal, we probably wouldn't have this problem. But there's also vested interest, as we know, to push tools that curb those behaviors that continue that beast running. Sorry if I went on a tangent.
Venture capital is the reason we're here. Venture capital is the reason we're here. You know, you can't blame Aaron Ross. You can blame the money guys who thought that Aaron Ross's book, you could replicate a Salesforce model back in 2014, whenever this really took off. And VC just threw good money after bad. And I had a good post today about my theory on why it got way worse the past 5 years, but that's probably another story. But I think that money getting thrown after a machine that was never meant to be successful is why we are feeling what we're feeling.
Yeah, but that's also created that niche market of these GTM engineers, right? So hyper validating the channels because the VCs pushing that model are still pushing the tools problem solution. So they have to do that. They can't pull out now because there might be like 3/4 of the run of getting to where they need to get out of those exit positions. So yeah, people don't look at the big picture in terms of architecture, in terms of solution. They just look at Adem and Joey might be right, but we can't do that because of X, Y, Z. And I'm sure you get the same type of DMs that I do and George does, whereas we're with you, but yeah. So yeah.
What could you do if you're a VP of biz dev at a global company that's doing 20 million or 20 billion in revenue? What are you going to do? You know, like nothing.
Yeah. We just have to keep the tidal wave and the pressure on by showing like market obvious that channels need to be validated so you can have more live conversations. And of those live conversations, they need to be pushed into first party intent signal. And with that, can then align your sales and marketing to be what it used to be. Sales and marketing were aligned. It's honestly as simple as that, but I think that people get pissed off at the both of us because it is that simple. And if it is that simple, it undoes their whole architecture of belief. Sorry, George, if that's too much of an answer.
No, it's great. Joe, I'd love to know from your perspective, was there a moment in time where you saw really the downstream consequences of this mass adoption of the predictable revenue model? You've spent a lot of time on the front lines yourself. Was there a particular moment where you sensed that this isn't quite right?
Yeah, it's when I bought into it for about a year because I was running this. I think it's just, it comes down to laziness on my part where I wasn't trying to get to the root issue of the problem. Instead, I was like, oh, the model's broken. No, the model just needed a little bit more care. And so instead, I started getting into more of the SDR-AE, fractionalizing the role. And for the record, I'm not against the SDR-AE model if it's done differently than it's done today. Like how I run it's very different. Like I pay an SDR 120,000 US dollars, flat, no commission, no bonuses. That's what you get paid because you're an ad channel for me. And the real work is happening with the AEs. What do they do with those conversations? I don't care about a meeting at all. And so for me, I ran into that model for about a year, and I started getting enough data back where I was like, this is hyper inefficient. Yet it was promised to me that this would be a more efficient model. And I should have known better because for me, it was in the true model for a long time. I started off in tech, the enterprise level, that's all it is. Nothing's happening today, more than likely. 3% of the market's buying. We all know that whole stat. And so I knew that I was building a pipe for this year, later this year, next year, and so on. Then I left the tech world and went into a really obscure world of commercial insurance and risk management. And that was the best world I could have possibly been in, because for me, it was, those deal cycles were 12, 24, 36 months. And I had to play the what's happening in the market, where are people at in the buyer cycle? Are they even aware of this problem? If it's not now, it's when. If it's not interested, it's why. If they're open to it, what would make them more open to it? And so I knew better, and then I went and built my first company, where I actually ended up selling it. And part of it was because I was frustrated that I made this mistake. And I went and ran that model and realized that I was just throwing a ton of money at a problem that I already knew how to solve. And I thought that bringing in 23-year-old cheap, at the time, 55-year or $55,000 SDRs would solve the problem. And it just exacerbated the problem. We blew through our TAM. We had no future pipeline. It was always, what's the pipe for this quarter that we can close? Because we were going after the 3%. And I lost my way for a season, but never looked back.
Do you think, sorry, George, do you think, Joey, just extending on what you said with that finding, because I found exactly the same thing. If the market, so more of the market saying that we're wrong, actually had the experience in the seat, would they not have also uncovered that we're, because do you think the loudest voices that have the biggest LinkedIn followings are ones that maybe came from sales ops or rev ops that don't actually know from the doing? Because what you've said is,
a lot of folks, yes, there's a lot of LinkedIn gurus out there that have never done a damn thing, at least not in this world. But I think it's also, I'm empathetic to the VPs of the world, the CROs of the world, because they're inundated, right? It's VC money that's funding the marketing for tools that tell them that it's not a model problem, it's an efficiency problem, or it's, you just need this thing and it'll finally unlock the thing that you've been struggling with. And on top of that, I think that we have also fractionalized leadership roles. Like VP of sales there used to be a lot of rev ops in VP of sales. There used to be a lot of like CRO work in VP of sales. But now it's like CRO is handling the P&L and the VP of sales is handling like some leadership and just taking the mandate from the top. And now rev ops is its own role, like hardcore own department. And so you've taken a lot of intel and data that a VP of sales would be hands-on with, that they could make better decisions with. And now they're like, I just have this really small niche role that I have to do, and I'm being inundated with all this tech and all these things. And you've got, we joke that RevOps is the sales prevention department. And so they listen to RevOps and they love an idea, but then it's, how do we operationalize this with our GTME, our go-to-market engineer? I don't know. I have a lot of problems with what's happening right now. And again, my theory of the last 5 years is that there's a lot of people in those roles that one, were never in seat, or they weren't in seat long enough. And then they finally got into seat, and whoever was there before them had this experience where that whole role was fractionalized out and the responsibilities are far more narrow than they should be.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you went and did in another industry or another vertical. And the first finding you had was that the deal cycles needed to be validated in terms of party intent signal. More of the people on LinkedIn or wherever in this bubble is had that cross-functional experience. They wouldn't be questioning validating the channel, validating the first party intent signal, and then bringing marketing into the fold for 3, 6, 9 months or 12 and 24 months of product road mapping. It should be market obvious revenue alignment architecture solution. Yep. But I think the pushback that you and I get for having these discussions, whether you want to call that cataloging the market, completions, conversations, etc., is they haven't actually done the work, and they haven't done it outside of the vertical niche, so they don't have that cross-pollination of experience to say, hang on, when you buy something, do you find out who they were with and what they liked about it before? Is it easier then to sell back to them? So if you're mowing a lawn, Joey, like you probably have greenskeepers. Who did you use last time? What did you like about it? Oh yeah, how much they charge? Yeah. So then it's pretty fucking piss easy to then sell greenskeeping back, knowing who you're with, what you liked, what you didn't like. So then translate that to car detailing. When did you get it last done for your BMW, whatever, right? It's not rocket science. It just need to validate the channel and then validate the signal and then come back and bring marketing into the fold for product to be built out to sell that solution at that point in time on their timing, not ours. And then it becomes closing deals like a easy. But it's just not how these people think, man. They just, sorry.
And the battle we're all fighting is that the SDR-AE model is very easy to market for. When you fractionalize out a role, you can create these niche technologies or niche products for that specific role. And then now we're fractionalizing even further where the SDR is now just becoming a phone person again, which, yay, I'll take it. But it used to be like phone, email, etc. And now you got a phone person who's the SDR. You've got a cold email team because of the domain reputation and all the things you got to do with rotations. And then you get the list building part as well, like who's handling the list building? Should it be centralized, decentralized? There's infinite things to market to. And so it becomes very easy to market. Whereas what we're talking about is like a very holistic, we should be cutting a lot of the fat and we should be consolidating, just like people are now starting to get smart and consolidate technology. We need to start consolidating roles and bring it back to, no, the AE should handle a shit ton more than they're handling today. It's not sit on your ass and wait for meetings. That's not your role.
Yep. So what it was in Australia, because we've got such obviously a smaller population, our whole population is about the size of Texas, man. So you can imagine we could have never done that. So if you tried to sell the meeting via email, people just literally blacklist you. Like, it's not just like you would see that person in the street somewhere. If you go to a conference, you go to an event, you fly to Melbourne, whatever, you'll eventually see those people from that company and they'll think you're a dickhead. So you can't do that. You can't just burn everyone.
Yeah. You already have a small enough TAM. Like, it's going to get real small if you keep screwing it up.
So I guess that's maybe given me same for the people that work for you. Maybe that's given us an enhanced lens of having to do multi-channel outbound by pushing back to the right channel to have the live conversation and get really good at that. So asking for permission, is this a better channel? Just to point back, or sending an email, but then knowing that you're also going to point back with a video message. Like we probably didn't do that 15 years ago, but we would have done that with voicemails, just name a number, because then they'll call you back. And then, hey, then you've got them on another channel. But this stuff is probably going to go back full circle with all of the AI tools. We're probably going to get pushed back into doing a lot more face-to-face or in-person, or like
what's going to be on the rise? Direct mail.
Yeah. That's where I'm going. Personalized deal boxes, postal boxes. Yep. That's what we used to do.
We're running a campaign right now.
That's yeah. So I talked to Ryan about this 4 years ago. I'm like, bro, this is what's going to happen. All of this shit's going to get saturated. We're going to go back to deal boxes in the post. You're going to get a gift. You open up and it's got, it's all nice. And it's got, this is someone you want to do business with. And inside of that, it'll have something tricky about like why you would want to do that to spark your interest. And that's going to be your channel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joey, can I jump in and ask, okay, so for your SDRs, everyone wants to measure them on meetings booked. You're not paying like a really good base salary for that person. What are you measuring them on if not meetings booked?
Completed conversations and disposition discipline. So I want...
Tell me what disposition discipline means, please. And how do you define completed conversation?
So I'll start with the first one, which is completed conversation is I got the person I intended onto a call, right? So they answered. We validated they did. We got them onto a call. They were able to, one, I was able to confirm is the right person. Two, I was able to get them through a pitch. And three, I was able to bucket them or disposition them into the appropriate bucket. Ryan talks about buckets all the time. Ryan and I both stole that from the recruiting world. We both came from IT recruiting. And so I used to call it stacks before Ryan ever wrote a book. He wrote the book. He then called it buckets. And we both did the same thing. But it's from the recruiting world because you're always working candidates through buckets. But a completion is person intended, confirmed, gets to the pitch, and I can bucket them into a specific category. Now, those categories for us at its simplest form, there's 6. It's meeting, it's activated, it's not now, it's not me, it's referred, it's not interested. Very simple 6. There's some subcategories, but those are the main. And so the North Star metric for the SDR for me is to have the conversation, confirm it's the right person, and then also make sure that we have a certain amount of completed conversations a day. Because again, I'm trying to case the market. I want to figure out who is everybody, who are the players, who is my list right, is my messaging right. But I want to figure out where's this account at? What is the incumbent solution? What are the biggest pain points they're experiencing? When is their budget cycle? What's their fiscal? Like all these things that you don't necessarily get online. And so I can talk to first party data, the person I want to talk to, and I can actually figure out more about that account than lives online. And then from there, outbound's very simple. List, message, rep, follow-up, timing. And so I got my list right, confirmed. I got my messaging, I got to a completion. I got my rep who can actually deliver that call effectively and have that conversation. Now I follow up based on those dispositions. So to that question, disposition discipline is I want to ensure that when you have the conversation, you properly bucket it at the end. And I need that because, one, it gives me intelligence on, was this the right targeting? Is it the right messaging? Am I training my reps the right way? But the last part is I now know how to follow up. You have really solid notes and you have a disposition. When it goes into that disposition, it goes into a separate list. That list now has intelligence attached to it, contact at the company I want to break into with notes. I've had a conversation and they're activated. Why are they activated? There's intent, there's intrigue, there's interest, something there. Now I feed that to an AE who's a more professional seller, right? Going back to the old days where the seller had a little more business acumen that came from CX or CS and they came to sales. The AE has the business acumen to carry on a much more in-depth conversation, even do a demo on the spot. But now they don't just call cold, they're calling to someone who we've already had a conversation with, gathered intel on, bucketed them appropriately, and the AE can go talk to them. And the funny thing is, when you don't focus on meetings and you focus on that, you get a lot more meetings. It just happens naturally. So, longer answer you probably asked for.
So, Joey, no, that's perfect. I guess my question is, why split those roles in the first place, and why not just have a full cycle BDM handle the whole thing?
So we started off Titan X with full cycle AEs. The challenge is we have so much demand that I don't have time for AEs to do PG for 3 or 4 hours a day. I just don't. I wish I could create it. I don't. And I still make them do pipe gen, but they are doing more or less follow up on the casing of the market. So think about it. If I have a whole list of 1,000 people and I found the 220 that I know I can get on the phone, I'm not leaving the other 780 out, but at first the 220 I can get on the phone. Then from there, if there's 3% buying, 7% open to it, the whole Chet Holmes thing, if that's true, we start figuring out where everybody else is at. I then feed all that intelligence to the AE to now go self-source off a much more curated list. And they go find their next best conversation, and they're going to have way higher conversions, way more talk time, way more intel they can gather for future conversations. And so the only reason I went there was because I did not care to continue to scale a full cycle AE. I'd rather keep the AEs more controlled. They're a lot more, I pay them a lot too. And so we ended up going to the SDR route. There's also something else, the new strategy that I'm running that's really interesting, and Adam would probably love it, that I really need an SDR for. And we can get into it if you'd like to. But
well, are you gonna share what that really interesting thing is?
You can't tell us.
No one's doing this, so I am hesitant, but I'll do it anyways and trust that most people are not executioners. So we are combining your world, George, with our world, which as it always should. And we're running audience activation instead of just casing the market and figuring out where people are at. Is one thing that I've found is that if I go, so typical benchmark metrics, if I have 100 connects, right? So we have an average 25% connect rate, 400 dials, I get 100 connects. 60 to 70% of those will end up in a completion on like an average campaign. From there, about 20 to 28, we're sitting at like 36 right now, but 20 to 28 is your activation rate. And about 8 to 10% ends up being meetings. I don't care about the meetings, but they're there. They happen.
Yeah.
And so that's a typical like funnel. Now, what we're doing with audience activation is we're taking more of a VSL type of approach, where it's a video sales letter that's highly curated. It's very specific to the persona we're going after. And I'm having my SDRs go to the market simply to get the opt-in to the VSL. And so they're calling and they're talking to our personas on a very curated list. So I'm just going after CROs at this size company, at this industry, and so on. They're at this stage, they have these signals about the account. What I have found is that if you do that approach, I will get 2 to 2.25x the amount of activations off of that, which creates a much more curated list for my AEs to then follow up with. But also, when you have the conversation, the SDR has the conversation with the prospect, instead of pushing a meeting or trying to get too in the weeds on intel, we say, hey, we tend to talk to CROs at logistics companies that are roughly in that 50 to 150 million range like you guys. My CEO actually put together a 15-minute video on what's the state of CROs in logistics today. Would you mind if I shot you a text with that link? That's it. That's your ask. And then what do I do? Then I feed that data to the AE. The AE sends the text. We have a system for that. AE sends a text with the link. We have tracking. Did they click the link? If they click the link, did they opt in? Did they click the link, opt in, did they watch the video? And there's now new buckets off of that. And on top of that, we pixeled them, so now we're running ads against them there as well. And so we're just creating a larger activation pool.
Yeah. Do you know what's real awesome about that? When I first used to be really coy about not explaining pillar 1 of closed circuit selling, I only started from pillar 2, which I used to explain around the other way, because even working like back in the day when I used to talk to Justin and Scott Martinez, and I did a little bit of work with Scott, I used to talk about pillar 2 being permission-based creative. And how I found out was when I was at Lease Plan, I kept noticing, right? So when we would go to do bids for like RFPs, and they'd always get rejected, even if we had the best price, the lowest margin, and the best product. So I was like, are these fucking dickheads in marketing? Don't know what they're doing or what? So I was like, I went and read them. And then I realized it was like 27 pages about us, not what it got the customer. So I was like, this is bullshit. I'm just going to take this home and rewrite them myself. And I ended up making that into a sales copy letter. And then I thought, who's still going to read this? Because I still need permission. So then I made that into an animated cartoon. And then I just got my BDMs to send it to people. Hey, Joey, we've just put this together for people just like you. Would it be okay just to show you what we've got? That was it. And then they click on the hidden link. And that would be like it back then. This is like 2014, man. So we did was it like hidden links on YouTube or Vimeo? Because I wasn't allowed to do it. Because I was
like private channels or whatever.
Yeah. So we did that. And what I found was there was like almost 8 people out of 10 that we super targeted went to either a meeting or a contract discussion just by doing those as activations. So then, George, just for your context, this was like 11 years ago. We then would catalog them on the entry of that meeting, not at the start, because they already said that they had intent from what they'd seen. And that's why I used to explain it around the other way, generally because I thought that if I explained all my pillars up front, I literally thought people on LinkedIn would be smart enough just to steal it all and then just never pay. But George convinced me in 2023, just explain how you do everything, and people still
don't ever do
push
it.
back. No, they put me in LinkedIn lunatics and said my injuries are.
I'm a frequenter on there.
Oh yeah, I just thought that was super interesting.
Twice a quarter, I'm in LinkedIn lunatics. So
yeah, I can 100% validate that approach will work, and I can 100% validate that teams are still not doing it now, even if it's market obvious. And then, George, what we would do is we would alternate between going for the catalog to build rapport and front-end relationships up front, or just going for the kill in a way by asking, is it okay to show them? And then I learned maybe 9 years later, I talked to Ryan. I saw a couple of things that he was doing on those Sandler calls when they were doing stuff. You're asking exactly what we would ask. By is it okay if we show you? Does it make sense to continue? But I didn't know any of that yet because I was just some dude from Australia at that point living in the South Island of New Zealand. And I literally just started talking about it on LinkedIn and found all people like that were doing similar things, but not an end-to-end process. Yeah.
Yeah. The cool thing too is part of like channel validation is I've seen that conversions just skyrocket when you can get them into a messaging channel. And you can't just text prospects cold. And so if I get the opt into the text, I've now got permission. And we use a tool that allows you to send iMessage at scale. And so I can actually have the blue bubble. And so it enables you to have these conversations on another channel. So you've got their cell. We know they answer. They have also opted into SMS. I can hit them on both channels. I can watch what's happening in the back end. Are they converting or not? Opting in or converting after they watch the demo / the VSL. And then we have a specific follow-up cadence off of that enables us to just have a lot more context on how are they interacting with it, how long do they stay on the site, were they engaged, were they not, they click and watch 14 seconds and jump off. If they didn't watch it at all, cool. We have their phone we can call them on, we have their phone we can text them on. We've got to get them back. And so I think that we haven't flushed it fully out to where I have enough data back to say, but I have run like opt-ins to webinars before. And the activation rate's like 55, 60%. At least.
Yeah.
So we need to shift the mentality then for marketers as well to go from stop just capturing contact details that you can get from a database anyway and shift towards capturing actionable commercial information. And we had a webinar expert called Justin Zimmerman come on the podcast probably 18 months ago. And he had a fascinating approach where he was effectively in his like webinar registration forms, instead of just collecting name, email, company position, all that kind of stuff, basically put all the questions that Adam would ask when cataloging the market, like current vendor, what do you like, what don't you like? And he showed that he still got an enormous amount of registrations, that there was no real difference in drop off of people completing the forms. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, like that activity was no longer just like to educate, which is fantastic. That's what we should be doing, but actually gives you a whole host of really valuable information to come back to the buyer on their terms as well. So you're not just going through and calling your list, trying to book a meeting with every single bloody person who attended the webinar, but you can go back and you can have really informed conversations with the right people at the right time. I think, Joey, maybe marketers need to shift their mentality to, yes, we need to educate, yes, we need to be remembered, but we also need to look at every opportunity for interaction as an opportunity to gain commercial information, which is not just selfish, but also helps the buyer work on their timeline as well.
That's right. Yeah, and I think even to take that a step further, the webinar is now with these progressive forms, like a type form or something like that, they capture partial answers. And so you can ask these, even if you're going to have fall off, if they only answer 6 of the 10, they fall off. One, I know they're human behavior. They're impatient. That's fine. I can use that. But 2, I've now collected more intel, even if they didn't get all the way through it. Because if you have a really long form, they may not opt in at as high of a level, but they'll start the form progressively. This question shows up, the next one shows up, the next one shows up. And I'm at a minimum collecting, to your point, commercial insight on this that I can use in future follow-up. Hey, John, I know you probably fell off. I didn't get to the video. I saw you were on the website, but didn't finish the form. There's a lot of questions. I get it. One thing you did say was this. Quick question about that. Follow up.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Love it. A great example of sales and marketing working together as one team. But Joey, marketers can't do that until sales start owning pipeline again, because otherwise we just get reduced to a lead gen function. And then that's where all our budget, time, and effort goes. And we don't get to do these other activities.
Correct. Adam, are you seeing this too? I don't know how you feel about pipeline coverage. I don't like it. Like this 3x, 4x multiple on pipeline coverage. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very infantile way to look at revenue acquisition. But I think that one of the most detrimental things we did was we tied the SDR function as the tip of the spear to pipeline coverage. I don't know if there's a thread for us to pull on there, but that's something I've been kicking around lately. Is like, why is that? Why do we have such an obsession with pipeline coverage? And the ironic thing is people are so fractionalized and don't know their numbers well enough that they had this arbitrary pipeline coverage. But if you actually map out their meetings held, sales accepted, and win rate, that coverage doesn't even get you to your target because your win rate's too low, or your sales accepted rate's too low, or your show rate's too low. And so it's funny.
When I used to still have to operate in those spheres, what I would talk about more is what's happening to the 97% of the market that we're rubbing up the wrong way to enable that coverage. If we enable our people just to work on first-party intent signals by validating more of the market, that enables us to roughly speak to about 20% more of the people that wouldn't have spoken to us if we were just pushing for the meeting, which is between 3 and 5%. So that is how I would always cover off on that. It's just, it seems like it's market obvious, but it's not. The obsession of that is driven by the tools, by what's being pushed. Whereas if people can just step outside of that or even run like a pilot program to validate more of the market, they get to speak to more of the market, they get more conversations, they get more live party intent signal, they can bring marketing into the fold. That's just not how people think, unfortunately.
Yeah. And George, like in your world with marketing and sales alignment here, which should never have even been a term, should have always been aligned. I'll give you a good example. We have a company, they're about to IPO. So they're a massive org. We cased the account. So we hit 4 or 5 levels on the phone, had really good intel and conversations. That then fed our LinkedIn retargeting ads. And they clicked on 11 ads over the course of 21 days and then converted. It's like we would not have put them in. Part of channel validation doesn't mean that just because I validate they can talk right now on a phone doesn't mean that's where they're going to convert necessarily, but we're using that intel to feed our ads being more personalized and more targeted. And now we have the specific people we can target in those accounts. Like it was actually really eye-opening for me because I knew it was working. Like I can just see, and attribution's a funny thing. But to look at 11 ads clicked starting 3 days after our last phone conversation was like light bulb.
And that's the beauty of this as well, is because I guess you've got like the two main functions of marketing. Like obviously the brand marketing, like reaches your future buyers. So when your team calls people up, they have some recognition of Titan X, right? And that's great. That's what we need to do. And then there's the partnering with sales and the sales activation side and the allocation of resources to get to those who are more likely to be in market. And that's, as you said, that's what allows us to do, is to better allocate our resources. Like, why would we spend a shit ton of money on a handful of accounts if we know that their contract isn't up for renewal for 2 years? Like, why are we prioritizing them with all of our marketing efforts? We probably want to do that 3-6 months out instead, because that's really when it's top of mind for people. We want to make that short list for them when they're starting to reconsider it. But marketers don't have that information. That information has to come firsthand from the market, from conversations. And instead, marketers are being sold all kinds of platforms to try and guess who is in market and when and what's important to them. And it just doesn't work, because how could you know that information?
Yeah, buyer intent, my least favorite thing in the world.
Yeah.
Hey, let's find a fraction of the buying market and let's give everyone that same information. I'll go after about 1.5% of the market right now.
We posted about that on LinkedIn a fair amount, and we still haven't had someone come in and say, we use this data and this is how great it's been for our team. It should be pretty easy.
I've seen one good case study for 6 cents, come to find out they're an affiliate. So maybe it wasn't even true.
Yeah.
But it seems like we've gone so far down the wrong path that obvious should be, right? Channel validated, market validated, first party intent signal, timing, or product roadmap. They're the people that should be bringing to the fold for marketing. Can you build us out at this amount of timing? And could you also then possibly send them some push stuff at these time increments? It should be that simple, but apparently it's not, because like even I reposted something yesterday just explaining this to another marketer, and she had no idea what I was talking about. What do you mean? In what world would we not want to know that information so that you could both be dually effective? Like, I can't fathom that. How could we get so far down this path that people, even in bums in seats, have no idea what we're saying? Like, what do you mean?
A question I have for you, Joey. Sorry, you go ahead, Joey.
No, it's not that important. I was just saying that the only thing I was going to make a point on was I think that the CRO today is coming from sales, or they're coming from marketing. They're not coming from revenue. It's a role that had to be filled that, unfortunately, depending on your background, you are going to be biased towards one versus the other, when it should be, no, I look at the holistic picture. This is how we work together on this whole thing. Unfortunately, that's somewhat of a unicorn these days to find someone that can actually sit in that seat. I think we should probably get rid of the role for most people unless they actually have that background.
I think what you touched on earlier, and I should have said, when you said people with a large contract or recruitment background, or even a finance background, have this idea of channel validation versus buckets, but also maybe that was also where we got some of this stuff from early, like Bill Pollock, Drake stuff, 1950s, where he would bucket this stuff into market validations, right? That was nothing new. That's how he knew timing to bring marketing into the fold to get those large contract acquisitions for all across Canada and the US. That into Drake International, right? Then that dripped into finance, and then I amalgamated that what I was doing from some high price suiting. I was doing this back in the day, man.
Nice.
I'd get my store managers for the most expensive suiting company in Australia called Christopher Cronus Designs to call people that had bought previously in those sections and do closed door events. Joey, I saw you bought a 44 large last time, and you like that nice skinny waist, you like the wide lapels. What we're going to do is next time Chris brings some through just like that, we're going to do a closed door event, see you at 6. How does that sound? So they'd do 5 or 6 of those calls a day. We'd sell more that way than we'd do through the store, all of the stores put together, free traffic, right? So then I used that same process at Fitness First when I was head of business development there. I was like, why are we just calling referral sheets from these dudes in London telling us to do this? I was like, bullshit, man. What we're going to do, We're going to find out where all of our best customers come from. Where do they work because they have money? We're going to call those employers and set up a benefits program. That call would look like this. Joey, just wondering, what do you give your valued employees in terms of employee benefits? And then just shut up and listen. You're going to say, I wish we could give them this. Would it be okay if we set up an affiliate program so that we could? They'll be quiet, listen. Okay, would it be okay if we could advertise it? We'll be on set, on staff, or on fucking site on these days. Cool. Now you've just turned that into a referral program into, could I get 30 people in the room at a time? Which department you be sending down? So you just asked HR. Easy. Okay, then I took that to finance. Then I met my mentor and he's like, nah, man, you need to catalog this way. And it should be obvious and it's very easy to cross-pollinate all of those skills, but people just don't think that way, man. And people that question whether selling into multiples that way is impossible. Anyway, that's another hurdle there. But I just had to come back on the recruitment, bucketing, market validation, first-party intent signal. Probably is some of that credit probably needs to go back to Bill Pollock in the 50s. I think that's where a lot of us got it, that came through those pathways and learnt it. I did the same for a company called Sinclair before I was at Drake, and then I did it at Program, Purcell Kelly, all of these companies coming out of Japan. But it's interesting.
I want to ask you, Joey, do you think we're going to hit a tipping point soon where like the fugazi of what's going on right now is going to start to fall over and people are going to wake up? Is that happening anytime soon?
It's happening as we speak. Do I think they're going to make the right decisions? No. But do I think that they're going to do away with what's not working? Yes. So do I think they're going to go to a broken model to probably another broken model? Yes, because that's just what happens. People don't sit down long enough and are not patient enough to think. But I'm sitting down right now with, I'll just say, a top 3 private equity firm in the tech space in the US. And they have, I won't give the exact number, but let's just say it's over 1,000 SDRs. And the conversation that's happening at the board level is, I want to go to 0. No more context, just we're going to go to 0. So why? I'm not even disagreeing necessarily yet in the conversation. My whole thing is like, you should go down to like 200, not go to 0. But they believe that they're going to push everything into demand gen, marketing, inbound. Now, what I do like about what they're thinking about is I think that they are going to start forcing, and I'm seeing this behavior starting to happen, forcing account executives to self-source again. That's top of my ROs and VPs right now because they're getting this mandate from the top. You got to think like daddy's daddy, the boss's boss, the venture capital firm or the private equity firm is telling you that I don't believe that much in the SDR model anymore. Your targets are going to continue to go up and to the right, but your budget for headcount is going to go down and to the left or down and to the right. And they're having to start thinking about, I still got to do pipe gen, so how am I going to do that? Get my AEs to get off their ass and stop waiting for meetings and start self-sourcing again. So I think it's headed it's directionally correct in terms of what we're running from. I'm afraid of what we're going to run to because I don't know. I really think that we're going to start running more towards the go-to-market engineer, like this signal-based automated outbound plus inbounds, which is not going to work. It hasn't worked. It won't work.
Yeah. I agree. How do we push them back towards what we believe is market obvious, where that needs to come from first party intent signal? And that also brings marketing into the fold, it brings CS into the fold through like a revenue. Everything is pivotal, as we've discussed here, from that market validation, from the channel being validated. So like, how do we just keep driving this force? Like as funny as what some of those altercations were when I challenged every sales methodology last year, but what I was saying was still fundamentally right. I'm just saying that a lot of them are reactive or qualification after the fact. They don't actually solve the problem of architectural alignment, which has always been my thing. Whereas it should be obvious. Okay, if we do this and get this timing for 3, 6, 9 months or 12 to 24 months product road mapping, we make marketing more efficient and unshackle them from lead gen. George is happy. That also then enables us to do old school and go back into a presentation day where AEs can actually walk through with the buying committee and the end users and the key account management team within the room. And you walk around, you get everyone within the room and you've got their focus. This is what it looks like to work with us, Joey. Is it going to be commercially viable? Will this pass credit? Will this pass legal? All of this stuff, right? That goes into a communication plan handover. Then we see if that's actually what it's good for us to work together and what it will look like. All of this obvious stuff sits nowhere. We speak to people that have never even seen a communication plan handover. Like we've spoken to heads of business development that have never seen a plan from an AE to CS of what the plan needs to look like. So how do they know if the plan's serviceable? This is why the market goes back to CS requirements like reactivations. But like, how can we continue to push against my question? The fugazi of these GTM engineers, we're just spruiting what should be obvious in terms of it's just an architecture. Follow these structures, your team will win, and you'll be more commercially viable. Don't do it paying these people thousands of bucks to do nothing.
Yeah, I think that the unfortunate answer is I don't think you get them there overnight. Certainly not. If you guys familiar with judo, like the martial art, it's always about using someone else's force or their energy or their push, and you pull. And so I think that we have to realize that we are at a pivotal moment in time where PEs and VCs are starting to realize that this model is broken. And I think that instead of letting them just shut it down and allocate it to something else that'll probably also shut down. You got to remember, 6 Sense and Demand Base had their day in the sun. It was Fugazi, but they had their day in the sun, then it got shut down. The same thing's gonna happen with GTME, right? Like Clay is cool to play with. It's not functionally all that great. It's functionally great for 3 things, but the other 9,000 things you could do in there are not that cool, or they're cool, they're just not that helpful. But I think that like to start moving the conversation towards, again, judo, use their force against them, is affirming them. Like, I think you're thinking directionally correct. I think that you want to go from X thousand SDRs to 0. It's directionally correct. You should actually, you're far too bloated. You have far too many sales reps. I can go into any sales org and probably fire 70 to 80% of them and get you producing more than you are today. But I don't think you should shut it down. And here's how I think you should start looking at it. And that's why we started talking a lot more about like conversational advertising. That's all the phone is. It is an advertising channel that I happen to get the exact person that I want to target that ad with at the exact account I want to sell into, and I get bi-directional feedback from the ad that I just delivered with my voice. And that can then feed my future ads, whether it be on the phone again, or it be SMS, or it be ads, etc. I think you have to start helping them think that like you have no problem dumping money into Google ads or other PPC channels like Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube and things of this nature. We need to start looking at like the cost per unit, whether it's cost per impression, cost per conversation, etc. Just like we'd open up LinkedIn ads, we'd monitor our CPMs and our CPCs and our cost per acquisition. We need to start doing that for the SDR and realizing that their job is not to be the tip of the spear for meetings. Their job is to be the tip of the spear for casing the market to help inform everything else behind it. And that's all they're for, literally, all they're for. And I think you can start envisioning them for that. But then you have to do the next step, which is now you've got to get your AEs doing something with that information. Now you've got to get your marketers doing something with that information. And AEs and the marketers have to work together, to your point, right? They are more aligned than the SDR is. The SDR is now, I look at them like LinkedIn ads. That's just all I look at them. Like, I don't need my AEs interacting with the LinkedIn ads channel. I need them taking whatever comes in from LinkedIn ads, intel, and doing something with that. So that's my 2 cents. I don't know if we can change it overnight, but I do think that this is a good time to start having those conversations.
I think that's the soundbite right there.
Yeah, that was awesome. Joey, another question I have is, okay, say you have 1,000 SDRs. We need to get that to 200. For those 200 that you keep, how hard is it to retrain them from going from meetings booked mindset to focusing on like completions of conversations and the disposition bucketing that you referred to?
Training them is exceptionally easy. Training their leaders is exceptionally hard. SDRs
because of how they're incentivized and measured?
Yeah, I think that training the SDR is actually going to be the easiest part. I think it's going to be exceptionally easy, actually. I think the challenging part is going to be training the leaders, right? They think in such finite times frames of 90-day sprints, right? We have an SKO for this quarter. We're doing a quarterly kickoff. And then at the end of the quarter, we're doing an evaluation. Did we hit our targets? And they don't realize that if we had a 12 or 18-month time horizon that we could actually sit back and watch this thing play out, it would blow the quarterly sprints out of the water. But unfortunately, with the 10 years of VPs, the 10 years of CROs, the 10 years of SDRs, the 10 years of AEs, we're losing all of that. And we're just churning, and there's attrition, and we're having to replace it and start over. and we're losing an AE mid-deal with some of our big customers, and we're losing SDRs after they've given us a bunch of intelligence, and we're losing a VP who might have been bought into a strategy that was more long-term. And so I think training the leadership is going to be the most challenging. Like realistically, like one of my objectives and missions right now is to go to the top. That's why I'm talking to the PEs. That's why I'm talking to the VCs, is I want to envision them for the long-term play. The PEs are a better bet for me, right? They have a little bit more longer time horizon, getting their money back in 3 to 5 to 8 years. I'm okay with sitting down with them. VCs have these sprints of playing hot potato on their series rounds. And so if I could sit down with a PE and really envision them for their 65 or 47 or 36 portcos of, hey, if you just ran this play for 12 months and really committed to this, and you really got your VPs, your CROs in a room to think about this strategically, the portfolio valuation is going to just go out the roof. And so back to your question, reps, real easy. It's refreshing to know that I'm paying $120,000 for you to not set meetings. That's a gangster role for an SDR coming out of college or a young 24-year-old kid. Is I know that I can go in there with no pressure of squeezing my last meeting in to hit quota. It's a terrible meeting, I know that, but I've got a cool side deal with my AE. Instead, if my entire job is to just talk to people, have discipline around what happened in that call, and you catalog it, to Adam's point, if that's my job, that's a great job. And not to mention, if there's no pressure there, I don't make high pressure decisions. I sit down, I think, I get more interested in the conversation because I'm realizing my company actually values the conversation. Instead of valuing the meeting, they value the conversation, the intel. So I'm going to start having better conversations. And then guess what? Those people, because they have better conversations, or have better business acumen, they can become AEs that are effective at this. And then better AEs become better managers. And then better managers become better sales leaders and VPs. And better VPs become better CROs. And then we've completely shifted the landscape of the org if we just gave it enough time. I truly think you could change the entire revenue org by letting the SDRs not have this high pressure, ridiculous North Star metric of meetings.
But Joey, that was absolutely incredible. Like amazing sound bites. I don't think we've actually had a more aligned conversation, Adem and I, with anyone than this one, even down to you two both being in LinkedIn lunatics, which is absolutely incredible. Joey, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such an insightful conversation, one that Adem and I have really enjoyed. Make sure you go and check out Joey Gilkey on LinkedIn, check out Titan X as well. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Joey. And thank you, Adem, for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, it just speaks to everything that we know, right? Everything changed after the measurements changed, and that changed everything in terms of the acumen that's out there right now. That's the layer that we need to change. The rest of it should be actually easy.
Perfect. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Adem.